It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Anna Fabrega, Chief Executive Officer for Freshly, the leading prepared meal delivery subscription service providing nutritionist-approved, balanced meals that are delivered fresh to your door and ready to eat in 3 minutes. Anna is a growth-oriented leader with over 20 years of business, operations, and organizational leadership experience at high-growth, early-stage businesses as well as large-scaled organizations. Her experience spans across brand marketing, distribution and supply chain, e-commerce, physical retail, technology, and CPG, including positions of increasing responsibility at Microsoft and Amazon prior to joining Freshly in 2021. During her career, she has built a reputation for operational excellence, innovative strategic thinking, leading leaders, working with the highest level of integrity, and a deep and passionate commitment to putting the customer first. Upon completing her undergraduate studies at the University of Florida in 1999, Anna started her career at McMaster-Carr, managing various distribution operations at a 300,000 square foot facility carrying over 500,000 products. She then earned an MBA in 2004 from Kellogg School of Management. Anna is a big thinker that balances scrappiness with operational and financial rigor. She has a high degree of curiosity and is well known for her ability to ask the right questions, look around corners, and to be clear and concise with her direction and advisement. She is based out of New York City and was named Inc. magazine's top 50 female tech leaders to watch in 2021. Anna Fabrega, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to have you here. Yeah, and we're here on a kind of a rainy northeastern day. Did you get a little rain down in Manhattan this morning? We had a little bit in Connecticut. It looks like it's starting to break up a little bit. How's the weather down where you are?
Looking good right now, but definitely some rain on the way in this morning.
Rain on the way in. I think it's probably heading down your way. Well, the good news is there's clear skies behind it. But at any rate, wonderful to have a chance to chat with you. We spoke a few weeks back, and we like to kind of kick off the podcast with understanding a little bit of your early beginnings. And maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what your early family life was like, what mom and dad did, brothers and sisters and such.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm originally from Panama. I was born in Panama. My dad is Panamanian, and so his side of the family still all live down there.
Wow.
Raised
so
in
bilingual.
Raised in a bilingual home. Yep.
Yeah.
We moved back to the States when I was about 4 years old, and then my parents got divorced, and my dad moved back to Panama. And so I actually grew up kind of halfway between the States and Panama. I would go to school here, and then I would spend summers over there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then so I had 4 siblings growing up in the U.S., halves and steps. I had 4 siblings growing up in Panama, halves and steps. So I'm used to a lot of chaos. Yeah, I'm used to a lot of chaos. So I would say my mom's side of the family, my grandfather, he was a GE executive for a long time, and when he retired, he got into the stock market and did very, very well for himself, but he kind of got me interested in the business world. And, we were a very kind of achievement oriented family. I have very much the oldest child syndrome. And so, I
Ah,
always made straight A's, was
sure.
always top of my class. And, probably start by age 12, I was reading the Wall Street Journal. My grandfather would send me his
Oh
copies.
my.
And so it was never a question that
That
I
you're
would
going
go
into
into business in
business.
some way, shape,
Yeah.
or form. Yep, that's
Yeah.
right.
That's awesome. And what about mom now? Did she work when she came back to the US, or was she focusing on bringing you and, your other siblings and half siblings up?
Yeah, mom actually ended up she was a theology major in undergrad of all things,
Oh,
but ended up going back and getting a master's in special education.
wow.
And so worked in special education, until she retired. My
Right.
dad was an executive with the local brewery down in Panama that has
Okay.
been, Sav Miller or Anheuser-Busch, depending on, the year. It
Yeah.
tends to change
Yeah.
ownership quite a bit. So,
Sure.
um, there wasn't a lot of pressure on me from my parents. It was mostly, self-instilled.
Wall Street
I
Journal at
needed
12, I
to.
can imagine.
That's right.
Did
That's
did
right.
you begin to buy stocks, and was your grandparents or your grandfather and your
Yeah,
parents?
yeah,
Yeah, did you
yeah.
create a
I would.
portfolio?
Yep. We did. So that was fun. And
Yeah.
I only recently did I stop managing my own portfolio because I just didn't really have the time to dedicate to it as much.
Right.
But
Right.
so yeah, I was pretty aware of the market and involved. And when I graduated from high school, I received a National Merit Scholarship.
Ah,
I
awesome.
received a
Congratulations.
National Hispanic Scholarship,
Nice.
National Merit Hispanic Scholarship, and then a Florida Bright Future Scholarship.
Wow.
So I effectively had, a completely full ride if I chose to go to
Nice.
a state school in Florida.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
knew that I was going to end up getting an MBA. That was a given. And so I decided I'm going to go and do my undergrad debt free.
Yep.
And I'll go to like the brand name school for my MBA.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I went to the University of Florida.
Right.
And of
Was
course,
mom living in Florida at the time? Is that where she returned to when she
yeah,
left Panama? Right.
we were in Pensacola, so it wasn't
Pensacola.
it wasn't wasn't too far away. Yep.
Yeah, no, Panhandle, lovely out there.
Yeah.
As a kid, other than your stock market investments, any other entrepreneurial things that you did? Was there other stuff that you did for spending money? Love to hear about that.
Occasionally I tried. I would get my parents to buy me boxes of candy at Sam's Club. And
Oh
I would
yeah,
take it to school and I would sell it to the other kids.
love it, love it.
And until the school administration was like, you can't do this. You're not allowed to do this. So I got shut down, but
Locker room retail, or what's it called?
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I tried.
Yeah. Oh, fun. I love it. What about sports? Were you involved in anything extracurricularly that kept you busy, or any clubs that you excelled in?
Yeah, so I was a very sedentary child, and when I got to high school, I decided that, and I would say somewhat socially awkward and a bit shy. So when I got to high school, I decided, I'm going to go be on a sports team
Yeah.
because that's like ready-made friends.
Sure.
So I started running cross country when I got to
Oh,
high school, and then I did track, and then I had played tennis for many years, and so I joined the tennis team. And then, we started a girls soccer team, and they were like,
nice.
"Hey, you cross country runners, you guys can run across the field back and forth for an hour. Can you please join the soccer team?" So I did those four throughout high school, and then again, like in preparation for college and having a great kind of transcript. I also was in Spanish club. I did student
Nice.
council. I
Yeah.
did I did math league. So I would do math competitions, which I loved because I'm a nerd. And my very favorite was law club. And law club
Ah,
was mock trial
kind of
competitions.
debate. Yeah,
And
mock trial. Yeah,
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 yeah.
cool.
And I loved it because you really had to think on your feet.
Right.
We would do these, we would prepare closing arguments, and you would kind of know what you were going to say, but you had to sit there and listen to the other side, what they were saying,
Right.
and then very,
Right.
very quickly come up with your narrative and your closing argument. And so it was really fun. I, for a brief second, considered becoming a lawyer until my uncles, who were both lawyers, were like, "You're not actually going to have the opportunity to litigate that much.
That's true.
Unless you go be a defense attorney, and then you're going to defend some terrible people, or you can go
Right.
be a prosecutor, and it's a pretty thankless job and you'll make no money."
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'll stick with business.
Turn away from that. Yeah. So University of Florida, full ride with all your scholarships. Congrats on that. You're a real low achiever, and I'm sure you've been told that a lot over the years.
No pressure on myself at
No
all.
No pressure at all. And you work a little bit then before you went to Northwestern to get your MBA, or what did you do in between those couple of years? Yeah.
So it's funny, I think my one college regret is I had a full ride, right? And I was so eager to get out into the working world that I effectively graduated in 3 years.
Yeah.
I finished all my school. My last semester of school, I did study abroad in France. I had been studying French for a while, and so I was able to gain fluency there. But I missed the recruiting season. So, I didn't get the benefit of all of the support that, the college provides. Right.
And so forth. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up coming home after being in France and, did what you do, started, writing. And this was, not everybody even had email back then.
That's right.
So I started writing cover letters and sending, resumes out. There's not much to put on a resume at that point other than my grades.
Sure. Right.
And I wasn't getting any bites. And I finally said, okay, I can't, I have to have a job. Like, this is not how my illustrious career starts.
Right.
So I decided to get in the car and drive up to the nearest big city, which was Atlanta. Right. And I checked into an extended stay motel, a really, really shitty one, because I was trying to save money. And I said, I am not leaving here until I have a job.
Good for you.
So,
and you wanted to live in Atlanta, or it just made the most sense?
Sure, it just made the most sense. Other cities felt scarier, so I opened up the phone book, as one did back then.
It's only 20 years ago, listeners, so it wasn't that long ago, before the internet didn't exist, right?
Right, yeah. I opened up the phone book and was going to just start calling every single headhunter, and the first one on the list was AAA. Of course. Right. And I called them up and I said, hey, I just graduated with highest honors, blah, blah, blah. And they said, we have two options for you. One of them is an enterprise rent-a-car management training program. The other is this tool company. They only hire from the top 10 colleges and universities. University of Florida is not a top 10, but maybe they'll give you a marketing job. So I said, okay, give me the tool company. Let me go interview with them.
Yeah.
So I went and I interviewed with them, and they offered me a spot in their management training program.
Perfect.
So that was my first job. And
that was the first recruiter you called. So
yes, that was the first recruiter I called.
And Enterprise, by the way, great company. We do a lot of recruiting.
Yes.
Wonderful training and that. So just interestingly about the decision between the two, why not talk to both? Did you kind of decide that the tool company is more interesting?
I thought it was more interesting. Yeah. And honestly, I was intrigued by the fact that they said that I probably wouldn't get the job.
Yeah. Right. Oh, God. It was a challenge. There we go.
Yeah. I get it. It was a challenge.
Okay. Well, I'll step up to that one. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So my first job, because I graduated early, I literally had just turned 21. Yeah. And my first job was supervising the packing and shipping department. I had 18 employees.
Wow. They gave you management responsibility out the door.
Yes. And I was terrified. Terrified.
These probably are 10, 15, 20 years older than you, I imagine.
Right. These are like real men.
Right.
Yes, they're real grown-ups, and I'm not. Yeah. And I have to manage these guys. And it was an not air-conditioned warehouse in Atlanta.
Gosh.
So it was a billion degrees in the summer.
Oh, gosh.
And the operation was chaos. Conveyor belts would go down and I'd be running around with my walkie drenched in sweat, trying to get the packages out the door. More often than not, I was ending up at night driving to the FedEx hub because, packages got left. It was it was a mess. But I also, was supervising these people. And I was like, how do I gain credibility with these guys? And so I just started listening, and I would listen to them. I would ask them their ideas. I would ask them what they thought we should do about problems.
Wow.
So not trying to be a commander, but rather really trying to leverage their knowledge and leverage their experience.
Now, did that come naturally to you? I mean, because, again, you're a high achiever. You obviously were, I'm sure very vocal in your classes and standing up and getting things done. Listening, as a 20-year-old doesn't necessarily come as a natural state, right? And is it just something that, occurred to you at the time, or had you seen it modeled in others, or had you always kind of been that way where, you listened and learned?
You know, I think I've always had a deep amount of intellectual curiosity.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just the logical, like I needed to figure out how to do this job.
Asking questions.
And
Right.
and so the
Yeah.
logical way to figure out how to do the job is to ask a lot of
Right.
questions,
Right.
and to gain better understanding. And so, while I was there, and I was really proud of this, one of the reasons that the operation was so chaotic was because orders would get filled, and there would be multiple lines in an order, and they would all kind of come together at the end of the line, and then a person would have to put the order together, and
Right.
different parts of the order were coming from different parts of the warehouse. And so
Yeah.
there were these assembly stations, and these assembly stations, they were, number one, they were not ergonomic in any way, shape, or form, and number two,
It
they were
wasn't
so
an
tightly
Amazon pick and
packed.
pack, right?
No, they were, yeah, so they were so tightly put together, they were literally standing butt to butt in these areas. And so it was just, there was no way to get any kind of real throughput. So
Right.
one of my jobs was to go redesign the layout. Again, like why that was one of my jobs, I have no idea, because I had no idea how to design a warehouse assembly area. But so I would stand out on the floor with people, and I would ask them, and I would watch them working. And so we figured
Mm.
out, like, hey, we have to mount the tape machine, and we should mount it at arm height. And it's easier to pull a box from the top than it is to bend over and get a box from the ground. And so we managed
Right.
to
Right.
design these stations that once we rolled them out, it was like night and day. All of a sudden, I remember coming out on the floor and being like, what happened to all the orders? And they're like, oh no, we're actually caught up. Like we're good. And I
Wow.
just had never seen that before. So, and
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah.
like, it wasn't because I was brilliant. It was because I implemented their ideas.
Yeah, they had good ideas, and probably no one had even asked before, right? In terms of how to make their work even better. Wow, that's awesome. Cool. So you spent a couple of years there, and then we won't cover all your assignments, but you did time with both Amazon and Microsoft. So, did you set your sights on working for those big companies in terms of getting the kind of experience you needed to, become what you are today, or did it just kind of naturally evolve to work for, two of the biggest and most successful companies in the country, if not the world?
It kind of evolved. So
Yeah.
I had been down in Corpus Christi and really enjoying my job working for a convenience store company, and had thought that I would always stay in operations, and then ended up
Yeah.
getting tagged to do marketing work, and that was great. And I got to a point where I realized that I was a big fish in a small pond,
Yeah.
and I was never going to be able to move to, the large pond, I guess, if I didn't go work for a big name brand company.
Mm, mm,
So I had contacts that were connected to Microsoft, and so I ended up going and interviewing with them. And I remember my first role at Microsoft was doing marketing for server and tool security products. And I
ah,
remember in the interview, when they offered me the job, I was like, "Are you sure? Because I sell beer and cigarettes, and you sell server security products." And they were like, "No, no, no, yeah, we want to hire you." So to me, and it was actually a step back from the title perspective, and it was
right,
a pay
right.
cut. So I was moving to a way more
Wow.
expensive city and taking a pay cut, but it was an investment in my own development. And so I felt strongly that I needed to go and spend time there and learn how big companies operate. And I did Microsoft for 3 years, and
Yeah.
I was much more of a kind of a consultant, I would say.
Yeah.
I kind of had moved over to the global brand strategy team and decided, hey, like I really miss operating, and that's what kind of led me to go over to Amazon.
Was the identity and security area new for them at that time, or had that existed? Because that was back in what, 2009, 2008?
Yeah, around 2008. It
Yeah,
had existed.
right.
It was Forefront was the
Got it.
brand back.
Yeah,
But remember back then, all of these products were on premise, and
that's right.
part of
Yeah,
what I did
yeah.
was help figure out how to migrate those brands to the cloud, because that was
Got
right
it.
when Azure was launching.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. So from there to Amazon, were you recruited over, or tell us about that path?
It's funny. I had just had a baby, and I was in this like parent support group where
Mm.
we would all get together and basically complain about our babies. And one of the other moms in my group worked at Amazon, and I was talking to her, and she said, "Hey, you should interview for this job. There's a job. You should come over to Amazon." And she connected me to the hiring manager, and I ended up interviewing for this job. They decided to hire an internal person for that job, but they said, we want you at Amazon. So that's how I ended up. I started out interviewing for one role and ended up taking a very, very different role.
Well, you went into the
But
sporting area with them,
that's
right? Which
right.
was,
Yeah.
and
So I ended up
was
going
that a
into
new,
sports.
yeah, was that a new area for them at the time, or had they been, engaged in that for a while?
They had been engaged in it for a while,
Yeah,
but it was still pretty nascent. They didn't
yeah,
have the top three at that point. They didn't have Under Armour. They didn't have Adidas. They didn't have Nike.
right, right,
Uh,
right,
but it
right,
was still, early days where, year over year growth in the 60% range, 60 to 70% range was like typical without really having to do much.
right, right. Cool. And what was it there? Gosh, you spent almost a decade at Amazon, which,
I did.
with large companies, you kind of fall into two categories. People that spend kind of 2 or 3 years and go, I've had enough, I'll move on. And others that, kind of just stay on and think that their career, will continue to develop there. Were you kind of at that stage where you thought that would be the last place you work, or did you kind of always keep, your eyes open for something else that would come along?
I thought that would be the last place I would work. I
Yeah, yeah,
joined, and Amazon is a very special culture,
it
and
is.
they're very, very anchored around the leadership principles. And for me, the leadership principles were like the core of my being. Like they just
Right.
aligned so well to who I was. I
Can you share those with us? What were some of those principles that you felt very aligned to?
Yeah, bias for action,
Yeah.
disagree and commit. I'm very good at disagreeing. uh, dive deep, learn and be
Yeah.
curious. I mean, they just really resonated with me.
Wow.
So, and what's funny is, what you described about, people hopping every couple of years within Amazon. There's so many opportunities because it's such a
Sure.
large organization that for the
Right.
most part, people do change jobs every couple of years.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
fungibility is so important there that you can go to a very, very different industry role function fairly easily. So
Right.
I was on the sports side for 3.5 years, and then
Yeah.
I got invited to interview. I actually had an offer to go run a different business that would have given me a very clear path to promotion and great. And I got invited to interview for something else, and they wouldn't tell me what it was, and they wouldn't tell me what it was even throughout the interview process. All
Internally.
Yeah,
Really?
internally. It was that
Wow.
secret. And
Jeez.
all they told me was that I would be the first business hire. They had a team of, product managers and engineers, and
Yeah.
that I would need to go and basically figure out this business, but they wouldn't tell me what the business was. So I'm
Kind of
like,
like
what?
a business unit head. Is that what that means? In other
Right.
words, you
Yeah. And
yeah, yeah. Wow.
but what happened was I interviewed with all of these tremendous people, and I left the interview and I thought, God, I'm going to learn so much by being in the same room with those people. I have to take this job, even though I have
Right.
no clue what it is.
Right.
And that's how I ended up on the Amazon Go team. And I
On
ended
the
up
go.
staying
Yeah.
on that team for 6.5 years,
Yeah.
which
More
is,
than half your time.
Amazon is like dog years, no one
Right.
stays for that long. Um, but it was such a great experience for me. And I just,
Yeah.
I learned so much about, building and how to think about trade-offs, and, how to operate, and scale something that is completely, completely different and new.
Right. Right. And then that ultimately led to the Amazon Kitchen business, right? Is that how you kind of transitioned with them, or what was Amazon Kitchen added to Go? Is that how that
It was
evolved for you
added
there?
to
It was
Go.
added.
Yeah, so
Okay, got it.
I was running Go end to end with the exception of tech, and was then asked to take on Amazon Kitchen as well. And
Yeah,
Amazon Kitchen, I think part of it was Amazon Kitchen was really one of our primary offerings within the Amazon Go stores, but they
right.
were also supplying the Amazon Fresh business and the Amazon Fresh stores. So
Okay.
it just kind of made sense. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
ran those two organizations, and they were pretty separate.
Yeah, yeah, got it. And obviously today, as CEO of Freshly, sounds like there might have been a little bit of common experiences there that attracted you. Tell us about how that worked in terms of leaving. Must have been hard after being a
It
decade
it was hard. It was.
there.
But I wanted to. I was starting to feel the itch to go see if I could be successful outside of Amazon.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so when I got contacted about Freshly, I was intrigued, one, because I really enjoy working in the food industry.
right,
Two,
right.
it was a succession plan for the CEO. So, he planned on staying around and the founder, he planned on staying around for maybe a couple more years. And
Yeah,
so,
because you
so
actually
I,
came in as kind of a chief sales or chief commercialization officer, right? Wasn't that
that's
your title
right.
at the
That's
time? Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
And with the Nestle acquisition, Nestle was really ready to invest capital to grow the business, and so we had these very, very huge kind of growth plans. And so I thought, this is going to be really fun. Like, we're gonna
Yeah,
triple the size of this business over the next few years, and
right.
I want to be a part of that. And they were going through this transition from being really, really scrappy startup to truly operating a scaled business. And so I liked the challenge of that as
Yeah.
well.
So when you joined, did you know was the Nestle opportunity already in the works, or was that something that was shared with you, or at least
Yes.
indicative? Yeah. So you knew that was coming.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It had been in the works while I was interviewing, and I joined a couple months after the
yeah.
acquisition was complete.
Got it. Cool. So tell us about Freshly. Let's just take a step back in the business model and its size and current footprint.
Yeah. So Freshly is a fresh prepared meal subscription service.
Right.
Our meal philosophy is, less sugar, less processed, more
Mm,
nutrients.
yeah.
So it's, individual single serve meals. They can be heated in a microwave. The food is actually really, really good. And
Mm.
don't just say that because I'm running the company, but also because I truly believe that. But it's really about accessible health and convenient
Mm.
health.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't, from my perspective, health doesn't have to be eating a bucket of kale. Health doesn't have to
Right.
be zero carbs. It can be, a whole food. It can be high quality protein with vegetables and, grains. And so, and we add things to it. So there's, hidden vegetables in the meatballs, and we use almond
Mm.
flour with our chicken parm instead of refined breadcrumbs. So there's like these sneaky little swaps that we'll do.
Love
Um,
it. Love it.
yeah, so it's great. We serve the entire, 48 states. We have 6 different facilities right now,
Right.
and it's been really, really interesting, kind of um, shifting the culture of the organization, which is necessary for scale, I believe,
Sure.
to less of a tops down approach and far more of a empower the workforce to
Mm.
make great decisions, see
Yeah.
something, say something, and really, really cross those lines of ownership, and instead of being functionally siloed.
Right.
With a
Right.
strong, strong focus on customer. And so
Mm.
all of the innovation that we're driving, all of the things that we're doing are really about, okay, how can we make the customer experience better? How can we better meet their needs? And so, for example, at the end of last year, we realized that, it's not very convenient to have to set an order and get the same number of meals every single week, because every week looks different. And
Sure.
so we built functionality into the system to make it super, super easy for people to flex up and flex down on a week to week basis. We make it
Yeah.
super easy for people to skip if they don't want, their order that week. And then we continue to add just a ton of variety because we don't want people to get menu fatigue. And so we're
Sure.
constantly innovating and rolling out new dishes and new kind of products.
What percentage of your customers actually source all their meals from you? Is there folks that do that?
I think there are. I don't
Yeah.
know the percentage, but we
Yeah.
definitely, our largest box size right now is 12 meals.
Wow.
And we also have people who have multiple subscriptions in one household. So
Love it.
yeah. So, I mean, I personally, when I was at Amazon, I kind of was always busy and I would take a can of soup with me every single day for lunch because I didn't have to
Right.
think about it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
soup is great, but it's not super healthy. It's super high sodium, whatever, or super
Sure.
processed. And now, that's my lunch and dinner is Freshly every single
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's been great. And I feel much better having healthier meals that I don't have to go and prepare myself.
Are they typically microwavable, or do you have the option of
Yes.
both stove as well as microwaves, or is it
You
only
could. I
microwave?
mean,
Yeah.
it's 2.5 to 3 minutes on the microwave,
Yeah.
and so
Easy.
it's super easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
How many employees today?
We have about 1,200 employees.
Yeah. Wow. And growing quick. Now you joined actually as the pandemic was underway. And how has that treated the company? I mean, there's been so much said about, home delivery and how those, companies have thrived, et cetera. Was the pandemic good to you, or did it probably it was a bit of a mixed bag, I bet.
The pandemic was great. The pandemic, not great, but it was good for
No, yeah,
business.
good for business, right? Right.
Yeah, the pandemic was good for business. It's interesting, everybody had to adapt to kind of this remote work from home environment.
Right.
We've
Right.
taken that from a company perspective and said, let's be perm remote, let's be flexible. Unless you're
Mm,
working in a facility, go ahead and work from wherever you need. We also have
yeah.
unlimited PTO. And so
Nice.
I'm also, if you need to take time to go take care of something, please do that.
Right.
But when you're here, you're here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we've tried to be really, really flexible and really consider kind of, our employees and people first,
Yeah.
from a cultural
Awesome.
perspective.
Awesome. And does Nestle give you pretty much autonomy in terms of, the running the day to day? How's that integration gone the last couple of years?
It's great. Nestle has basically said, tell us where you need help and we will
Yeah.
help you.
Yeah.
And if you don't want us to help you, then we're going to stay out of your way. So
Right.
we're completely, we don't have any integration with systems or anything like that. We're completely, we operate as standalone right now, but we certainly do work really hard to make sure that we're super transparent on things like performance of the business or where we're investing capital or things like that.
Yeah. Now you spoke earlier about, your first job and how important listening was, right? And asking a lot of questions and how that helped you make so much significant differences. I'm sure that's a skill set that you still use today. Certainly one that I certainly learned over time, also being a curious person. But tell us a little bit more about maybe how your leadership has evolved now that you're sitting in the corner office.
Yeah, I early in my career, I spent a lot of time listening, but there was also an element to being successful that was just based on being a high achiever and being good at my job.
Right.
And over time, I think as you add functions that you're running, as you're managing larger organizations, it changes to be really more about developing the people who work for you.
Yeah.
And because I'm never going to be better than my head of manufacturing at
Right.
manufacturing.
Right.
So part of my job now is really to remove barriers, to get out of their way and to make sure that they're not being blocked, to be a sounding board, to provide guidance and to make sure that I have really strong audit mechanisms so that I know when I need to dive in and get
Right.
super into the weeds. So my job is about, really making sure that the organization understands how to think about problems, how to come up with recommendations. I have kind of a standard, anyone who's worked with me for a while knows kind of the standard questions that I ask, because I'm always trying to look around corners. I'm always trying to make sure that we've considered all options. And if we're aligned on how we think about making decisions, then chances are we're going to be aligned on the recommendation that's being made. So that's really, my job is so much more about people now than it ever has been in the past. And honestly, sometimes I miss getting into the weeds of, coming up with a solution to the problem. But that's not this job. I have to let my team do that.
Right. How do you monitor that? Do you have a dashboard? Is there weekly meetings? How do you kind of, be able to indicate where, or be able to get an early notice on, there might be a problem somewhere where you need to zoom in and spend a little more time on it?
Yeah, I credit Amazon with kind of teaching me how to be really, really good about diving deep and auditing. We kind of have a what I'll call a rhythm of the business list, and so it really will depend. If it's I do a weekly business review where I'm looking at both input and output metrics. And I'm comparing to goal and I'm comparing to trend. And the way that I know when I need to dive in is because if I ask a question and the owner of that metric doesn't know the answer, or the owner of that metric isn't giving me a sufficient answer, then I start digging deeper and deeper and deeper. That's right. But for other things, it might be different. For a big strategic, product launch, we might do readiness meetings, we might do program reviews, where there's a document that's written articulating, all of the things that we need to consider. And so depending on what the work stream is, we have different mechanisms that we use, and that gives me the opportunity to audit. It also gives me the opportunity to ask questions, and it gives the team the opportunity to kind of ask questions of each other, which I think is so important.
Yeah, super important. What would you say is kind of most unique or unusual about the Freshly culture?
I would say we are, because we're all remote, it's sometimes really, really hard to kind of maintain that sense of community and camaraderie. So we actually just yesterday, I've been in the office today, and yesterday we had a whole bunch of people here, and it was fascinating. Like it's like we never went remote. The team just works so well together and jives so well together, and that's great, because the evolution of a culture can be very jarring for people, and I've been really proud of the organization for how well they've embraced kind of the changes that we've made.
Right. What do you think is missing without, kind of having that daily contact, or is there anything missing, without everyone being in the office every day?
It's the humanization of the people that you work with. I've had this conversation.
The water cooler discussions, as we used to say.
That, and I welcome. I like a culture where people can be open and direct, and we can have healthy debate. And sometimes healthy debate, you leave the conversation not feeling great. And I think the challenge with being remote is that in an in-person environment, after you have that healthy debate, you can chit chat in the hallway, you can go grab a beer. And that's a little bit harder to do. Harder to do remotely, because you hang up the phone and then you're just kind of stewing. So I think that's one of the things that we try to encourage is, a lot of just more personal connection with people. And Slack has been a great tool as well to help with kind of just the chit chat or the one-off random like drive-bys that you don't have when you're not in person.
Yeah. What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire at Freshly, Anna?
I look for three primary things. I look for high judgment. So I'm trying to assess, because the reality is you're never going to have perfect information to make decisions. And so I'm looking for people who can make decisions and generally be right about those decisions, even in the face of incomplete information.
Yeah.
The second is intellectual curiosity.
Mm.
I want people who are asking why 5 times. Because if you only ask it one time, you're probably not going deep enough, and you're probably not going to really get to the root cause.
Right,
So
right.
so intellectual
That sounds like an
curiosity.
Amazon skill, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Finely toned and honed
That's
there.
right. That's right. So I look for deep intellectual curiosity. I look for
Yeah,
but I also am looking for people who can look around corners and who can
right.
be kind of always thinking one step ahead. And anytime you bring someone on board, it's rare that they've done every single thing that job is going to entail in the
Right,
past. So
right,
it's
right.
really about, can this person learn? Can this person
Yeah,
figure it out?
yeah,
That to me is the most important thing when hiring someone.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, you have a favorite interview question you ask?
Yeah. When I was at Amazon, I don't ask this question anymore. When I was at Amazon and before, marijuana started to become legalized in certain states,
Right,
I would
yeah.
I would
Including
ask,
Washington. Yeah,
including Washington, yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
would ask candidates. I would say, Amazon wants to get into the cannabis business, and tell me all the questions that we need to go ask and answer in order to be able to launch this business.
Mm, wow, very
And
good. Because you get
I'm
good
really just trying to get a feel for,
how
how
they
do they
think
think about
about
the
that.
different facets of the
Yeah,
problem? Do they think
yeah,
about the customer experience, about the operational experience?
sure. Great
How well can they
question.
think through it? And it's funny,
Right,
I
right.
often would get better answers from undergrads just graduating than I would
Yeah,
get from very,
right.
very well experienced people. But so that
Yeah.
used to be my favorite question.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Anna, we're just about out of time, but we always ask one last question of our CEO guests. And that's kind of, what career and life advice would you give someone who maybe is, a couple of decades back in their career than you, and taking a look at the corner office themselves?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One is your path doesn't have to be linear. In fact, it probably won't be linear, and that's
Right.
okay. That's actually great. My path has certainly not been linear. The
Yeah.
second is, especially if you're a high achiever, failure will not break you. It's
Right.
okay. It's really okay to mess up. It's really okay to fail. There's always learnings on the other side of it.
Well,
And
yeah, to the
so,
contrary, it's probably a good thing to happen every now and
right,
then,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Once you
So
take the
be
falling away.
be
Yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
okay with that, and don't beat yourself up.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, listen, Anna Fabrega, CEO of Freshly, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.